Jesus then goes and calms the storm. But in Matthew, who is writing to a Jewish audience, Matthew, who has done all the genealogies, Matthew, who is probably a little more of a scribe, now places a definition. And it says, if you read it correctly, of course, then when they were alone, the disciples asked Jesus, please explain the parable. And then Jesus tells the second story. But note that the second story is not explained in Mark, and the second story is for a particular, he's now talking to the disciples. Whereas before, he had told the story to everyone, to allow them to apply this message. He had told this first story, you see, to people who were wondering about, and this would have been a Jewish community, of this 10 Commandments, and now it had been exalted to 613, you see. They were under the law, worried about if they didn't keep the law, all the washing and purification, could they not see that God was not the thumb down or the thumb rejection God? For them, you see, God is gracious. But when the disciples pressed him, so what does it mean? And this is unique to Matthew. Matthew, who's now writing probably in that 80, 90 AD, when the Christian church is really concerned about purity, about establishing their own identity. And in these words, and undoubtedly Jesus could speak these words, but he's speaking to the disciples. These are the in crowd. These are the called ones now. So he can tell them things as you should hear now, because you're the elect. You're the baptized, named, claimed, and called ones, you see. So now he goes on and says, okay, do you understand that God is not out there looking to pull every weed out of you? God is not trying to trample you. God is not trying to collect all that you are in a bundle and burn you. Then he goes on and tells an allegory, really. It's an allegory which is a really old form of teaching. Just as Jackie, all the allegories, all the teachings that we used to use. Just as I told this first story, now I tell you a new story. The one who sowed the seeds, the Son of Man. So it's back-to-back teaching. The field is the world. Where the good seed stands are the sons of the children of the kingdom, really. So if you're in your bulletin, use this verse 37 as well. The enemy who sowed the seed was the devil. You know, we have tragedy come to us. We really want a definition or an answer why. We want to use our rationale. And this second story appeals to our rationale. And I think it's a wonderful teaching. In the context of not having heard that God is gracious, we could teach this parable. That's the nature of God, you see. God is coming so that we will be pure and that he will burn all of the chaff away. And if you have sin in your life, you'll probably get burned too. But you know the first story. You know that's not the nature of God. But to be in the in-group now, then there is this theme. The invitation to purity. The invitation to an awareness of sin in our lives that the rest of the world will not have. But you and I can be aware. The early teaching of male Jewish families would be to memorize the first 5 books of the Torah. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. So memorize the entire Torah. So they would know the law. And they would know that if they hadn't kept the law, an eye for an eye, be ye perfect as I am perfect. They knew that they were in constant awareness that God has power to judge. And so this would not be new news to the 12 disciples. But it would be a call for them to realize that in the midst of the seed that's been sown, there is the reality of the weeds. And to be vigilant, to be care-filled. But again, it's not one of condemnation. And it also ends, if you will, that in the midst of God's final judgment, in the midst of God coming again with his purity, with his power. And how many of you were, wow, I know some of you just got back from BC, but for that lightning show, was that West End? A great lightning show. I heard the number of thousands of lightning hits here in Saskatoon, but it was great. Great. That's one of the images that Revelation uses in terms of God's final power. His coming in lightning, in that type of power. And in that moment, you see, then the righteous, the forgiven ones, which are you and I, not because of what we've done, then we will shine like the sun in the presence of the kingdom of the Father forever. And then he was ears to hear, let him hear. That's kind of an ending that Matthew uses, but also the other Gospels. All repeat. Jesus said nothing but in parables. Everything he taught them was in parables. It's kind of an interesting connection literarily, but also for the themes that we have. I have a little chunk here. And as you look at this word, it can be used for a lot of things. One of the things that could be used is to make a cross on the wall. Give thanks for Darcy Cochran. Some of you remember Kathy, our intern. He was a woodworker. Now this could be used for a door jamb. It could be used for a set fire. It could be used to throw at someone, I guess, if you were angry. These stories could be used like this block of wood. We could just set it aside. We could use it as just something rough and guarded. Or we could use it perhaps as a candle holder. May we be given the grace of God to use these stories and apply them to ourselves in such a way that they bring light and health and hope. My final story before ending with a prayer of hope is about my mother in a way. But there's a family member who is having one of those terrible days. And this family member happened to be one of my niece, but Grandma's granddaughter, and having a terrible day. And talking about the fact that things were not going good. She was disappointed in terms of her classes. Professors, it was seemingly too hard, didn't like it. Her boyfriend, there was a whole litany of things. Things were not going well. Got a big zit, Grandma, just went on and on. Beautiful girl, wonderful musician, but things weren't going what she wanted. The nursing classes, all of that. And my mother's response was, "But you have a beautiful smile." And it's true. I remember some days where that 1 acre garden, there was seemingly a half-mile of corn and 57 rows of potatoes. I don't know how many potatoes or hills there was. And then all the beets, and you go right across, and the carrots. And one of the roles for us as we were younger was to learn how to weed. And I thought that it would be more fun. I had an Indian rubber ball, black ball. We had foundation set for an angle, and I learned how to throw it, so hit that on an angle and come right back to your mitt. Great. I could practice that. I think you really smile. You're not that intelligent. It's right back here. Made me smile. And I remember Mom says, "You can't just do stuff and smile all the time. Go weed the garden." Same mother, but a different situation. The granddaughter needed to be encouraged. Just smile. Life is hard. I needed probably a little, put my glove down, get out there. I think our God is a heavenly parent. Wants to know that you've got a beautiful smile. When I'm wanting for the times when you say, "I'll just sit here and smile," and know that people are in need and we don't move, then I think we're not shining like the children of the kingdom that we're meant to. So perhaps in these stories, we can gain a new sense in terms of what really Paul is inviting us to. And thank you again, Doris. That hope does not disappoint us. And we're not ever going to be perfect. Or be that wheat that has 60, 30, 60, and 100-fold of produce all the time. We're not going to be maybe number one multi-body. We don't be the beautiful flowers like these lilies are. But we're called to serve as we are, knowing that God will transform us each day. That's the hope that we have, and in that hope, the beautiful themes that I want to leave with you as well. In the midst of all the gardening, and there are some good gardeners as well, I'm really sad that the irises have such a short season. Did you see the prairie lilies? They're just out on that road by North Battlefield. Maybe you saw them. Flowers have a short season. But as you tend to the garden of your life, may you flower as well. Two verses now. Colossians 1:27, one of my favorite. The truth that Christ in you is the hope of glory.